What's up, monitors? On this episode, we're going to take a look at the follow-up to The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor on Netflix, and also we're going to take a look at the first season of Star Trek Lower Decks. These items and our usual business on this episode of The Monitors. Let's go! So by now you're aware that Netflix has released the follow-up to their 2018 hit The Haunting of Hill House with this year's The Haunting of Bly Manor. Much in the tradition of American Horror Story, showrunner Mike Flanagan has brought back some alumni of Hill House, including Victoria Pedretti, Henry Thomas, Oliver Jackson Cohen, and Carla Gugino. Based primarily on the classic 1898 novel, The Turning of the Screw by Henry James, as well as some other material from that author, The Haunting of Bly Manor is a story told at an engagement party in 2007 about events that were said to have unfolded in the 1980s at a large British estate referred to as Bly Manor. The storyteller, played by Carla Gugino, recounts a story of a young American woman named Dani Clayton, played by Pedretti, who becomes a live-in nanny to a bright but seemingly troubled pair of siblings, a brother and sister, named Miles and Flora Wingrave. She is reluctantly hired by the children's uncle, Henry Wingrave, played by Henry Thomas, who has been charged with their care after the untimely death of the parents, Henry's brother and wife. The Haunting of Bly Manor is, of course, a ghost story, much like The Haunting of Hill House. Hill House did so many things so well that it's completely understandable that you might go into Bly Manor hoping for more of the same. In a few ways you get it, but this is a different story and things unfold differently. Bly Manor feels like it gets going a little bit faster in comparison to Hill House, but is still layered and very crafty with some detailed storytelling. It seems a little less focused upon initial viewing, but that is definitely not true. There are many ghosts, entities, and apparitions that appear, and each in their own way are all creepy. One of the main primary ghosts, however, Edmund, while significant to Dani's character, ultimately doesn't play into the overall plot like the others and feels like he kind of quote-unquote breaks the rules of the story. His appearance is unsettling, and when it's explained why he appears, the payoff tells us a lot about Dani's character, but seems like a diversion from the main story. It both works and yet doesn't quite land. As for the rest of the series, it does work mostly. I know I was personally looking forward to something akin to the Hill House episode 5 with the Brokeneck Lady revelation. We got something similar in a thread featuring Tania Miller's Mrs. Gross, but it doesn't have the same splash of cold water like the Hill House sequence. But, like Hill House before it, the ensemble cast is quite watchable. Pedretti, Jackson Cohen, Thomas, and Tania Miller are joined by Amelia Eve, Rahul Kohli, Tahira Sharif, and they're all fantastic. The principal children, Benjamin Evan Ainsworth and Amelie B. Smith, are scary good. You see what I did there? Scary good. Anyway, all the acting is perfectly splendid. The story is very meticulous and well directed. One compliment and maybe criticism is that the story is so layered that if you're not completely dialed in, you'll miss a lot. But then maybe it just bears a second viewing. That can be one of the disadvantages of a streaming platform. When you have all of your episodes all prepared in front of you like a great big meal, you tend to gobble it up all at once. And you might miss some things that you won't if you have like a week in between episodes to ponder. Bly Manor is a meal that should be taken in courses, so bear that in mind. Now, all that said, I'm not sure that the story behind the main evil of Bly Manor really works. As far as ghost origin stories go, this one kind of feels rather arbitrary. I mean, there were some really cool things about it, but as far as the underlying reason for ghost stories go, But still, when you get to the end of the final episode, it is worth it. There is a final payoff that by the time it arrives you might see it coming, but that doesn't lessen its impact. I'd say Mike Flanagan's sophomore effort into serialized classic horror is definitely more success than failure, particularly if you're clicking on The Haunting of Bly Manor for repeat viewings. Definitely worth your time. Since CBS All Access has become the new home for all things Trek, for better or worse, we have seen some interesting additions to the Trek universe. Picard has just wrapped its freshman season, and the third season of Star Trek Discovery has just premiered, probably its last season if we're being frank, and the stories of Captain Pike #1 and Mr. Spock are just over the horizon in Strange New Worlds, perhaps. The Star Trek universe, however, has seen the return of the animated series with Star Trek Lower Decks. Lower Decks is completely a comedy, which is unheard of for Trek. Kind of a raunch comedy. There have been humorous episodes from previous Trek series, but there has never been a series played entirely for laughs. But in the new Kirkman era of Trek under CBS Paramount, what's the worst that could happen? I suppose the answer to that would be subjective. Lower Decks is set on the USS Cerritos in the era just after the events of Star Trek Nemesis. The title refers to the day-to-day affairs of the ship's junior officers who work and live on the ship's lower decks. This was, of course, the title of an episode from the 7th season of Star Trek The Next Generation that had a similar plotline, but for the most part it wasn't played for laughs. This Lower Decks is created by Mike McMahon and features the voices of Tawny Newsome, Jack Quaid, shame that guy can't catch a break, Noel Wells, Eugene Cordero, Don Lewis, Jerry O'Connell, Fred Tassiori, Gillian Bigman, and Paul Scheer, as well as many others. The story follows Ensign Beckett Mariner and Ensign Brad Boimler. Mariner is a deliberately underachieving, often willfully insubordinate junior officer who, unbeknownst to most of the crew, is actually the ship captain Carol Freeman's daughter, which is the main reason her antics don't see her thrown out of Starfleet. The irony is that Mariner does everything extremely well and could have any posting in Starfleet she wants. But she would rather have fun and buck the system. Though she would deny it, her best friend is Ensign Bradward Boimler, who is awkward, clumsy, could not be any more Mariner's opposite, and is constantly sucking up to try to get a promotion. These two interact most frequently with Ensign Devon Attendee, who is Orion, and Ensign Sam Rutherford, who is a cyborg, not to be confused with a Borg. Captain Freeman's bridge crew is her first officer, Commander Jack Ransom, who is basically a meathead, Lieutenant Shax, a Bajoran who is bloodthirstier than most Klingons, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Ta'ana, who is a cat. Yeah, I said it, she's a cat, who drops the F-bomb a lot, and Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Andy Billups, and he's just a bit of a nerd, but probably the most likable of the bridge crew. Since the Cerritos is not the Enterprise, it does not necessarily get high-profile assignments. In fact, the Cerritos specializes in second contact. They get to go over all the minutiae and details that a first contact mission would not have to be bothered with. This gives someone like Mariner room to maneuver. Lower Deck style of irreverent humor is meant to appeal to everyone, as it sort of feels like Family Guy light, sometimes. Which kind of lands it in the Orville lane, but it is definitely written for Trek fans from the TOS and TNG eras. Each episode is chock full of inside jokes that only a Trek fan would get. The characters are all distinct, but they are not really written in a way that they are relatable right off the bat. Mariner herself feels like, what if Michael Burnham just didn't give a crap? It's kind of like she's Star Trek's version of Homelander, which kind of works because that makes Boimler Huey, and Jack Quaid plays both. But the point is that it takes a while to warm up to these characters, and they're all strongly developed characters, but they're just not initially likable. They do grow on you, however. The voice acting is definitely not a problem. The cast is led by Newsome, and she's very funny. I was kind of surprised how good Jack Quaid is as Boimler. If no one told you, you would never know that this is the guy who killed Rue in the Hunger Games, or blew up Translucent with a butt bomb in The Boys. Honestly, the scripts are often funny too. I confess I was laughing out loud on more than one occasion. But for Lower Decks, it seems to come back to that same old issue that plagues all of the new Trek content on CBS All Access. It just doesn't feel like Trek. Yet in every superficial way it is. The universe is the same, the aliens are the same, the technology is the same, but it just doesn't feel like Trek. And yet I've seen every episode. And if there's a season 2, I'll watch that too. If you have anything to say about anything that you saw or heard today, either of our segments or any of that Facebook stuff, please leave your comment below. Please give us a like, working hard to give you new content. Click that subscribe button so you can come around and get it. And in the meantime, that's it. You guys be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and we're out. Peace.